Hey y'all, hey, welcome back to A Good Things Marriage Chats. I'm Tiara.
And I am Adrian. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Before we get into our video with our guest, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Put all the things down, notifications, share. We got a good topic today. You gonna tell us about it, sweetie?
I am. But first, I want to give a disclaimer. I need you to have an open mind. Open your mind, open your heart to receive. Let me first tell you that God is huge, He is big, He is amazing, and He has created all things, including the planets, the stars, the cosmos.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about astrology today.
Yes.
And this may be a sensitive subject for some.
Yeah.
Because I know the negative connotation is behind it. But I'm going to ask you for today to please be open. Just to give you a little background, Chinese, Hindu, Islamic, Jewish, Tibetan, and Western astrology offers distinct insights and connection between the cosmos and our human affairs here on earth. There is so much to learn and know. God has left us all tools and resources to use. Please have an open mind, y'all.
Yeah.
This astrologer we're having today,
Yes.
she knows a lot.
She does. And what Ronnie say on the Players Club, she said what she said, but I'm going to change the words. Closed minds don't get fed. Okay, so open up that mind so you can be fed.
That's right.
And do some great things in your marriages, in your relationships, in your engagements, in your all.
Yep, that's right.
In your life.
That's right.
So open up the minds, and y'all go ahead and stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
For Miss Annie. We love you.
Love y'all.
Mwah.
Hey everybody, this is Tiara with A Good Things Marriage Chats.
And
Welcome back.
And I am Adrian. Hey y'all.
Hey y'all, hey. We're so glad to have you guys back here on our show. And we have a special guest today. If you guys have been watching and paying attention, we're super excited. We have Miss Annie, and I will let her introduce herself at this time.
Yes, my name is Annie Egerer, and I am located in California. And I have actually studied astrology of all sorts and types since I was about 13 years old.
Wow.
My mom used to teach a class on it in college. So a lot of the beginnings of it, came from her. And I want to say, like what we're discussing today, a lot of my roots were in relationships. Being a teenager, of course, trying to figure it all out. And then my friends would know that I did it and want me to figure their stuff out, and I guess you could say you learn how to do things right by doing things wrong sometimes too. So through the course of, it's been about 25 years now. I've seen a lot of charts. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of, different situations play out. So it's just kind of left me with a big inventory of knowledge,
Yeah.
And I do consider myself pretty intuitive, and being able to connect with people. So, being able to connect with your chart and your energy, really helps me be able to see what's going on, between two people. So
Yeah.
it can be a very valuable tool.
I agree. I've just touched the brinks of astrology. And what we're looking at today, guys, is, well, the show is entitled Looking at the Signs, literally. So meaning, looking at astrology. And I know that some people are kind of fearful looking at astrology. There's kind of like a negative thought process behind astrology. And my mind has always been open up to it, even though, I was raised in a Christian Baptist church where, we were kind of taught like, oh no, that's of the enemy. That's the dark side. That's this. And I'm just like, as many things as I was read about it, I was like, this is making too much sense. It doesn't, I don't get it.
Yeah.
It was hard for me to receive that, And so more and more I have been learning about it. And now, where we are going, because Adrian and I attend the same church, we're attending a church that's more open into like the higher things of God and spirituality, and realizing and knowing that he created all things, everything. Yes. We are so
the planets,
much bigger. Oh, yeah, absolutely. He created it all, And so I said, no, we're going to dig into this some more. And I think people, if they only knew, like, this is just one more tool. This is just one more resource of being able to connect, since everything is connected anyway. This is one more way of knowing, like, wow, like there's so much information and so many things to know and find out about myself using this tool. So that's why we have Miss Annie on today, because she's really good with, from what I've seen, like relationship stuff as well. And of course, being that we're a marriage show supporter, I figured this would be really great for her to come on and give us some good insight. We're going to talk about birth charts, what they are. We're going to talk about some of the things that you can look at to identify in your birth chart about your spouse, about your future. And keep in mind, as Annie will probably tell you, like there's a lot of things concerning a birth chart that is suggesting what could possibly happen. There's still a lot of suggesting information. It's not like, oh, you can read this and it's like everything is like so verbatim, because there's a lot of things that can vary or change, but there's a suggestion of it's possible that you could have had this, or you could have had that, or experienced this with this parent or that parent or whatever. But I've just found a lot of it to be true and valuable information. And, I still remember the time where I found out, this is a couple of years ago, and I told Adrian this, when I really started digging into my birth chart, I was looking at this book and reading it and reading some things about me, and I literally just had tears rolling down my face.
Validating. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, how can someone say this is not God? He is all up and through this,
Yeah.
So okay, I'm going to stop talking. I know I've been talking y'all's head off. Unless you had anything, Dree, before Annie gets into talking about birth charts.
Oh no.
She's intrigued. She's listening.
Yes, I am. Let's go ahead and jump into some questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, on the subject, that could get on a whole different, tangent as far as like, religion and stuff like that goes. But really, to do it justice, you got to look back and realize that astrology was originally practiced by royalty, by kings. So it was considered like sacred knowledge, and also that the three wise men were basically astrologers, that they followed, that they followed the stars as well. So, I mean, just my personal opinion, I obviously I don't speak for God, but I feel like that kind of is partially where the don't do it comes from, the enemy part comes from, because it can be misused. So I think it just, that's the way that I look at it, in order to kind of like give respect to God that way, to really be respectful to people, be respectful of possibility, of free will, and stuff like that. I think it's a map for things, but it doesn't tell you what exit to take, if that makes sense sometimes.
And that's where that free will comes in.
Yeah. Choice versus chance, the chicken before the egg, so I think that gets into just the bigger existential question of the whole entire universe on that.
I agree.
Those are my thoughts as far as.
No, I agree. I agree with your perspective. And, that's the same to say with any type of medium or divination, because we don't know it. It's not common knowledge. It's not something that's been practiced regularly, except by some darker sides. Then we just automatically associate it with being, it's all bad, it's all this, and not recognizing that everything is what's the word?
Interconnected and shadow and light.
Interconnected.
Yeah.
And there's things that are always going to be mimicked as well. Right. But God is the source of all power, every power there is. So,
yeah.
So Annie, can you share with us a little bit about, in general, what a birth chart is?
Well, as we know, there are planets at large right now up in space. And what astrology is, it's a circle, and it's basically looking up at the sky right now and taking a snapshot of it. And that's how you can get a birth chart for a person, for a pet, for a business, for a crime, for anything pretty much. So that's the moment in time. Your rising sign is the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon, where you were born. So that's why where you were born matters. Whole sign is where each sign is its own house. And Placidus or Placidus, there's debated how you pronounce it. That has more calculated house cusps. And what that does, your rising sign starts your chart. And there's corresponding signs, corresponding houses for signs. So Aries is the first sign. So the first house is Aries house,
Right.
Then, it depends on what sign is there, because that determines the rest of the whole chart. We all have each sign in us, ruling some part of our lives, whether it be, our career or our home or our relationships, So we also look at the planetary rulers of each house cusp. So say your first house is, I'm a Sagittarius rising, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So that would make Jupiter what we call my chart ruler, right? So that's a very important planet in your chart.
Can I add something in real quick? So I want people to know, because there's a lot of times where when a discussion about astrology does come up, a lot of times they're just associating astrology by identifying with one sign. Yeah. So they're just like, hey, I'm a Leo. Hey, I'm a Cancer. Yeah. And that's it. That's all. They don't know. And that's why I really wanted you to start talking about the birth chart. And I'll have to show you guys like a picture of a circle of what it looks like. And there's different styles as well, as Annie was kind of alluding to. But there's that whole snapshot. The planets are all in different places on that whole thing. So they're all affecting you in some way, depending on their location, not just the sun sign. So I just wanted to add it in for someone who don't even have a clue.
Yeah. The sun sign, more or less, kind of its popularity started like kind of in the 20s. Because it is very broad. A lot of the information had been lost and stuff like that. It was harder to access and stuff. So, more or less, I would call them charlatans, but I suppose they weren't wrong. An Aries person is going to, like you said, a Leo's going to Leo, so it's not like they were wrong necessarily, but it was a lot more generalized and easy to just throw it out there and hit a lot more people that go, yeah, that sounds like me,
Yeah.
So that's where the popularity of it came from. But really, another way of looking at it is your chart is like the stage of your life. And each planet is a character. They all have a part to play. Mercury is our mind, and the moon is our emotions, and the sun is our soul and our core identity, So each of those things, like you said, are playing an important role. So that's why when we look at where each planet is in your chart, you're looking at where this character is playing their part in your life.
Yeah.
And the sign that it's in is telling you how it's doing it, basically.
Yeah.
So that's why you can have two people with a Taurus moon, but they have different rising signs. So that puts it in a different house. That's how you have people with the same sun sign that are vastly different sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes you run into somebody where you don't really have anything in common with them, yet you click instantly.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. It's kind of complex. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. It's, we've talked about before, like you could literally talk about this forever.
Yeah.
There's so much to dig. Even when it comes to like for your family, your children, your spouse, like there's so much. And there's other cultures that actually practice this that is just that
India.
we don't. And to your point, it's been practiced for, I don't even know if I should say centuries or thousands of years, but it's not. It's just not appreciated enough, and I think that the plus with some of cultures is that because they do look at it and they do analyze it, some of them actually use it to help people with their compatibility before even getting married, which is a disadvantage for our culture because we don't look at it like that. Now they may look at just a simple sun sign compatibility. It's like, oh yeah, Cancer's usually good with this or such a use, but it's just really not that simple. So we wanted you to kind of talk about that too in the birth chart. What are some things that you can look for that helps you to see a good amount of compatibility with another person's chart?
That was a question right out my mouth.
It makes me think back on your guys' video that you did about co-parenting, how you were touching on green lights and red flags, basically. Basically you want to see harmonious aspects between the sun and the moon. You want to see harmonious aspects between Venuses and or moons. Red flags for me that I've seen be bad. Pluto in particular. Pluto with a trine, even a trine, can just be so heavy and compulsive. I had a Venus Pluto trine between my ex-husband, and that's all we wanted to do was just pick at each, so I think it's important to see the red flags and see the green lights. A lesser, like a yellow light, I'd say, would be more like Saturn on someone's Mercury, for example. That may make somebody feel like, why you always got to be such a wet blanket? You got to, lighten up sometimes, kind of thing. As opposed to, Mars square Saturn, where, or Pluto square Mars, where you could be talking about like actual like violence, that's when you want to kind of, walk away from stuff like that. Or manipulation. Pluto is a big one. The I'm sorry, come back, or the I'll change stuff, that can be heavy Pluto. The one that I've seen actually not be too terribly bad was Pluto on the moon of another person. I have yet, some other astrologers may disagree or, want to debate that, but just in my personal experience, I have a couple friends that have that. And I've seen a couple other couples that have that, and they're not fighting or beating each other up or, stalking each other or anything crazy like that. They just have a really deep, enduring connection. So, yeah.
So just to touch on what Annie's sharing with you guys right now, on the birth chart, you have placements of things like the actual planets, asteroids. I can't think of all the terms, but there's different signs that are basically on the chart placed in different houses, which each house, as she mentioned earlier, is ruled by a planet. And then there's marks on your birth chart. So you can literally have your birth chart lined with your spouse, potential spouse, whoever, and see the way those lines are marking up, the way those placements falls on top of yours. That's kind of what she's talking about. So I know it's kind of hard to talk about if you haven't really seen it before. So after you watch this, you can just go back and Google a birth chart, and I promise you I'll share a picture below just so you can see what it looks like.
Yeah,
It can be kind of confusing.
Yeah, the best place to go is going to be to astro.com. It's a website in Switzerland, and they have all kinds of free, they're like the best in the world, a lot of free resources. And it's really easy as long as you know your birth information. It's surprising how many people don't know what time they were born.
But
That's my husband.
If you don't know, then what you do is you adjust the time. You go in there and just put in 12 noon and see what it gives you. And then you either adjust it forward or backward until the ascendant or the rising sign is matching either the sun or the moon, because that matches with your personal placements, which can also be very accurate. Sometimes I've seen the moon be better, and sometimes I've seen the sun be better, So I'd start with the moon if you don't know your birth time.
And some of these websites, which I think Astro does, when you put in your information, which is your birth date, the time you were born, and the city and state, not only will it pull up that birth chart, but it will actually provide information for you based off those placements. So you can start to understand, okay, well, since this is in this house, since this is this, since these two planets are together, since, it'll give you information to start kind of understanding. But of course, right.
I found that, was it Chani or Chani?
Chani.
The Chani app is very helpful as well. So I've used Astro. When I was introduced to it, Tiara told me to go to Astro. So I did Astro. So I have one on Astro, and then I have one on Chani. And I like the one on Chani better just because of how it looks visually. But yeah, I'm going to try what you said though, as far as adjusting the hours and the time, because my husband doesn't know what time he was born. So we're like just trying to figure out his birth chart.
Yeah, go with his moon. Start with his moon and see, because that starts the chart with his moon. So that'll give you an idea for where his cusps for his chart are laying.
Okay. So when it comes to birth charts, one thing that I've learned, especially through you, Annie, is that there's a lot of ways to navigate identifying the challenges that you could possibly have. And that could stem from childhood. It could stem from previous lives, whole nother conversation.
Yes,
it a whole bunch of different things. But I'm trying to think what's the best way to say. I don't know. I guess in the case of trying to navigate and figure out those things, it probably is best to actually reach out to a astrologer experience or professional astrologer like yourself, really to dig in, because you guys really know the ins and outs of how different things affects different things. And, even when it comes to things like a transit, for instance. So a transit is a way of knowing on the outskirts of that birth chart how planets are moving around, which all move at different times of the year for a certain length of amount of time. It's so deep. It's like, it's so much to it, but she could look at that chart and say, okay, well, this might be happening because currently this planet is transiting this house. So they may be just experiencing this, it may be just this, because part of me is thinking okay, obviously we want to try to help people save marriages if at all possible when they're in situations that may be tricky or challenging. And we know that sometimes that could be a moment in time, or it could just be where you guys weren't compatible. And, but I've even heard of people who weren't compatible, but they still made it work. Now, was that for terrible reasons because they just stuck it through and suffered and dealt with, what couldn't have, now they're unhappy and, it could be that too. But, just from what I've learned too thus far, the birth chart doesn't necessarily have to be the final say. Like, you know, you can still, because of the authority that we have, that we've been given, and, you know, through prayer, however way, you know, we could see and acknowledge and identify those things and work on it, because now I'm aware of it. Now I don't know if your spouse is going to be aware of it or not, but you know, those are things that
We
maybe
can only be responsible for ourselves at the end of the day.
Right. So you can't, you know, to that point, you can't make anyone do anything. It's a great thing if you're both agreeing to work on each other, or work on the marriage. But you know, what's your thoughts about, you know, when people are identifying challenges? Are there just certain challenges that, you know, is so strong, so heavy, so toxic, whatever the word, I can't think of the right word I want to use, that, you know, just more than likely, like if you see that, like more than likely, you know, you're going to get a divorce. More than likely, it's not going to work because this person is just not going to.
I can think of quite a few different examples,
Okay.
to touch on what you're saying. Heavy Neptune influences.
Mm-hmm.
I recently looked at one particular set of charts, and there was real heavy Neptune energy going on,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just, he's not being honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's talking sweet to you, and he's not calling you back after that. Is
Yeah.
he? You know,
Yeah.
and but they also had a Venus square Mars between the two, so there was passion and friction and attraction. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I forget what the other person's placements were, but he was I forget now, but just, this is a guy that's not serious. He's already kind of not a serious person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the way that he's interacting with you is, oh, that's what it was. They had a sixth house composite sun. Now, I'll get to composites.
Okay.
But sixth house is, you know, work, it's service, you know, giving of yourself selflessly, basically. And I've seen that play out in two different ways. And in that situation, I think it was playing out where one person does all the giving, you know, and the other person just kind of gives and gives and gives, and the other just kind of takes and takes and takes. But on the flip side, I actually have a sixth house sun with my husband. And so, like, to touch on what you said, that it takes two, you know, it takes both. He brings me coffee every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Sixth house sun, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but then I bring him a frozen drink at work because it's 112 degrees outside, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
So it goes both.
Right.
We, you know, if
Yeah.
it's not that way, then it's just all take and no give, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and again, like you said, having somebody qualified look at it, I've studied for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as really diving into comprehending the whole scope of human interaction, you know, nobody under the age of 25 is going to be able to do that. You know,
Yeah.
I was no different. And I remember a good friend of mine was getting into a relationship. I was about 23, and she wanted me to look at, you know, their stuff. And I don't remember what it was now, but I saw something, and I was reading on astro.com about it, and it sounded kind of negative, you know. But I couldn't see in my mind's eye, or, you know, again, you know, life experience, you know, it didn't seem like they were going to end up that way. They seemed like they were, you know. And so I remember just kind of I remember thinking that it probably won't be a problem because it doesn't seem like it's a problem now.
Yeah.
And they ended up divorced, you know. So lesson learned, you know, it matters when you go to somebody that's seen different things play out, because then, like you said, that's how you can get to kind of know this person, you know, and you can realize that these people met on the internet and one of them's not going to want to move, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, how you are perfect together, and it is great, you know, and sometimes it happens when you get married and things change, you know.
Yeah.
So
We've
there's
talked about that a lot
also,
on our show too, on our episodes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also the matter of the composite chart. Now, a composite chart is what they call the midpoint method. And that's where you take each planet of each person and you bring them to the middle. And that creates a whole separate chart. And, you know, it's the energy that you create with another person when you're in each other's company, basically. And, you know, good example with the Pluto stuff again. Real heavy Pluto can be a lot of battling it out, you know, fighting it out, mutually assured destruction, as they say. But then I've also seen it. Adam Ellenboss had a good example where he had a heavy, I think it was his Venus square his best college buddy's Pluto, right? And he goes, now, you know, none of that was a different context. We were friends, not, you know, in a relationship. He goes, but we were also the ones that were passed out drunk in the hallway all the time and hung over the next day. Because, you know, so they didn't like wreck each other in a relationship. But when they hung out, they would party too much and they figuratively would just kind of wreck each other, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, context matters. You know, so we create a composite chart with each person that we interact with, you know? So that's how you can have good synastry with somebody, but the way all the midpoints line up, you know, there's Saturn on the ascendant opposite Venus, like there's just no love kind of thing, you know? So, or how you can be with one person and they're one way, but then you're with somebody else and you feel like a different person with somebody else, you know? So,
and I'm sure that like the experience you were talking about, you being intuitive and hearing and, you know, listening and especially if you're connected with your higher self, like all of that helps and matters, just like on the time frame of being able to see and hear as well as seeing, I guess is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, experiencing it, seeing it at work in life, you know, it's crazy.
So I see a lot of reference a lot of times about being able to see your spouse in certain houses. Like, you know, we know that, well, not we know that, but the seventh house is supposed to be very popular for showing, you know, your marriage and maybe give hints around if you get married early or later, or if you have challenges with that. Or I've also seen things that say, oh, well, your spouse is, you know, your wife is, I don't even know the right one anymore. I don't remember. I was looking at it. It's Jupiter, or your spouse is this. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I'm glad that you found that, because that's actually not a really widely known thing. That for a woman, Jupiter, that's the ancient stuff there, that Jupiter actually represents a woman's husband. And a woman having a retrograde Jupiter may, you know, have some challenges that might need to get ironed out, you know. Not a death sentence to anything, but Jupiter is definitely where you look for that. And the same goes for a male. You look at his Venus, because that's his wife. And same goes for that. If a male has a retrograde Venus, then there may be something going on with that too.
So if you can kind of elaborate, if we're saying that Jupiter is the wife, what are you necessarily...
Or Jupiter's the husband. And
I'm sorry.
And Venus is the wife. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're looking at Jupiter as the husband, what part or what are you looking for if you're researching Jupiter to identify characteristics per se, or you know, hints around to let you know, oh, okay, this is the type of spouse more than likely that I'm going to have?
Well, it's funny because there's different components to that. We could look at Jupiter or Venus for male or females, and then there's also the seventh house cusp, you know, like you said. But just as an example, my Jupiter is Pisces, and my first husband was an alcoholic. Neptune, drink, you know. And my current husband is actually a characteristic wise a very compassionate, spiritual, you know, open. So kind of encompassing the light and the dark, both, you know. And my seventh house cusp is Gemini, and my first husband was a Virgo, which is co-ruled by Mercury. So my husband also has a Sagittarius rising, and his first wife had a Gemini moon. So the first marriage is the seventh house. The second marriage is the ninth house. Third marriage is your 11th house. And the fourth marriage is your first house.
Wow.
And if you have somebody like Elizabeth Taylor that got married, 5 or 6 times, something like that in her life, she went all the way around the wheel to the point where she'd married one guy twice, I think. You know? Wow. So, yeah. So my husband's 7th house is Mercury, just like mine. And we both have Mercury ex-spouses. So 9th house would be my second marriage, which is Leo. His Juno is in Leo, and my moon is in Leo. So it lines up. You know, you find it there.
Right.
Crazy.
So for someone who may want to know this question, because I know I was inquisitive about it the first time, what if you don't have anything that's in the 7th house? What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything.
That's the where the planetary rulers come into play. So whatever sign is on whatever house you're looking at, you want to look at the ruler of that sign. And basically, if you're just learning astrology, like from bare bones, nothing, then really my recommendation would be to just start with the signs. Like the signs are like the alphabet. Yeah. The archetypes. Not necessarily, you know, because the archetypes are how people get stereotyped, you know, that all signs are one way and they're not, you know, right. Light and dark and a lot of stuff going on. But yeah.
I don't want to take over questions. You got a question?
I'm learning.
Oh, okay.
I'm in straight learn mode.
So, well, let me ask you this first. So you've been married twice and you've been doing this a long time. Did you look at you all's birth charts before you got married?
Yeah, another true story. I looked at the chart of the day that I was going to marry my ex-husband. And my ex-husband actually picked our wedding day. And it was another one of those, I saw it and I saw a bunch of Aries placements. Mercury was at 29 degrees. Just a lot of, and I remember, you know, and I remember coming to the conclusion that it wasn't going to be so bad because I have a lot of Aries placements, that was just, you know, the energy manifesting of, you know, the two of us or whatever. Yeah. I did read a lot about that. And now looking back on it, I think what that was more, it's the fate versus choice question. I think all the stuff that was going on in that chart was more or less in a synchronistic way expressing all of the negativity that was already present, you know, in our relationship. So best believe when I married Joe, there wasn't very much, but I did scour the internet looking for stuff. And I did learn a lot about how to do that. So I meticulously picked our wedding day and, and I think it's worked out well so far. So
I was just going to ask you that next. If you find yourself as an experienced astrologer, like making sure that certain events that you schedule it on certain days, making sure it's not within certain retrogrades, certain conjunctions or anything. Do you find yourself doing that?
I do. I think there's other people out there that take it a lot farther than I do.
Yeah.
If anything, I'm probably too lazy to do all that. But I do keep pretty close track about what's going on up there, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, for example, like my best friend is getting married and I picked her wedding day too. And one of the things you want to look for is no retrograde planets, right? But we are preparing to have a retrograde coming up here pretty soon, right before the wedding. And she's like, are you sure that that's not going to make everything go haywire and get all screwed up, you know, right before? I'm like, well, I'm not going to promise anything. But really though, with a Mercury retrograde specifically, it's not that it's bad to plan or do anything like that. It's that whatever you do under a Mercury retrograde will be revisited later. And you're revisiting things when things are retrograde. I told her, so that kind of makes sense so you've spent all this time planning, you know, that you have this retrograde. It's a period of review. You're going back through everything. You're making sure that things don't, you know, get screwed up, that your orders are in and that you know, your dress has shown up and that it fits right, you know, and so, you know, again, you can only predict the future so much. Maybe that looks like your dress doesn't fit and it's a disaster and you have to fix it, you know, but you'd better find that out now than on your wedding day, though, you know, right? So retrogrades stuff like that can be used for stuff.
Is Mercury retrograde the worst retrograde?
No.
Okay.
No. I would definitely say that a Mars retrograde is a lot harder because it has a lot of restricted, like you got your foot on the brake and the gas at the same time, kind of a feeling, you know, and that energy kind of spreads around and gets everybody frustrated, and then they crash their cars, and then, you know. Yeah. So I would say a Mars retrograde is a lot harder. Some Mercury retrogrades aren't so bad. It depends on what sign it's in. It depends on what it's aspecting. And it also depends on how all of those signs interact with your stuff, you know. So complex, like you said.
I guess another question I'll ask, just in general about astrology, since you know multiple types, what is like the main difference between Western versus Vedic, for instance? Because I've heard that Vedic is the one, I've heard that Vedic is the one, or Vedic, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Vedic is the one that was actually used by like the three wise men, for instance, so that maybe it was more older or more ancient or whatever the case. So what's your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question, and that's also another in a long list of things that's misunderstood as well. You are correct. Back in the day, the original OG astrologers that were doing it, they were using Vedic is a system of interpretation. Sidereal, the word sidereal is referring to time and measurement. So sidereal is measured from up there. That's why they call it the actual planetary, astronomical placements. Where the split happened was when they got to Rome with it. When they call it Western astrology or modern astrology, they're actually referring to ancient Rome. And they were the ones that got their hands on it, and they came with a different, where all those Greek myths and stuff come into play. You know, the goddess Venus, you know, stuff like that. That was what the Romans did with it, right? And the difference is Western tropical is measured from Earth. And that is why Western tropical is 24 degrees ahead of sidereal timing. And it's different. Vedic sidereal, they break it down into, they don't even read the same kinds of charts that we do. They're a square.
They're squares.
It's weird.
It's confusing.
Yeah. The best way I've learned, there's a lot of the Vedic astrologers out there, like Joni Patri and Adam Ellenbach. Well, he's not specifically Vedic, but they call it Eastern astrology for Western minds, right? For example, traditional Vedic sidereal, they hadn't discovered the outer planets yet. They didn't know what Pluto was. They didn't know what Uranus was. So they didn't include it. And there's still some hardcore believers out there that don't, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I came to kind of read between the lines and apply it to myself is, for example, my sun is far enough into Aries to where when you back it up 24 degrees, it's still in Aries. So it's not different. The degree is different. Yeah. But the degrees and what they call nakshatras, which are different blocks inside each of these, you know, different signs, that's kind of more what they look at. They look at your moon, at your rising, and they look at what nakshatra it's in. And Vedic sidereal, I would say, is a lot more accurate for predicting like world events. You know, but yeah, so it's measured differently. And what else? So in Vedic, my moon backs up to being a Cancer moon. And at first I thought, like, I'm not a Cancer moon. Like, that doesn't fit. That doesn't sound like me. But then I realized that I have a lot of Cancer people in my family. In Vedic, my rising sign backs up to being a Scorpio rising. And I thought, well, that kind of fits. You know, my mom has a Scorpio rising. So it's like the difference between a pie and a cobbler. It's the same ingredients, you know, it's just put together different and presented differently. But when you taste it, you can't tell the difference. You're still you is the point. You're not a different person in another chart.
And I can totally agree with you on that, because I have a couple of apps on my phone. One of them, I think it's called Cosmic Insights, which has the Vedic. Which way is the right way? Vedic.
I've heard it pronounced Vedic.
Okay, so I'll say Vedic. But it has my ascendant as being different. And so when reading it, it was one of them things like, okay, well, if I read the Western, I can kind of see, but if I read the Vedic, I could kind of see a little bit too, you know. And that's one thing that I've just learned in general about, you know, astrology. Like you said, you're just making up you. And when you read this stuff, you should be able to identify all parts of you. Like, God made us so complex. He made us to be just amazing human beings. And we're all different. And I think the biggest takeaway really for me in starting to learn about astrology, as much as we want to like help couples with compatibility and learning about one another, and, you know, looking to see the red, the green flags, like you said, that really is still about learning about you first. Learning about you, who you are, your makeup, so you can
where they came from. Exactly.
Because some of those very things in that chart could implicate things that you're trying to overcome in this life, that challenges you may needed to get from that person or learn from them or whatever, you know, even if it is only a short time. We don't want anyone to get divorced, but, you know, we all have stuff to learn. We all have challenges and karma and all the above of things that we want to learn in this time period that we're already predestined. So
for sure.
Did you have anything, Dree?
It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in.
You just start with the signs like the alphabet, because when you learn the archetypes of the signs, that's when you start, the aspects make sense. That Virgo is trine Taurus, you know, you just kind of know that like ABC, you know. So, and then your chart starts to make a lot more sense. You can go, oh, my Venus is trying my midheaven, because it's in that sign,
Yeah.
So
it always gives me a little anxiety when I think about like comparing my birth chart to my husband's. I'm like, oh, what if we don't match up? Like,
it's probably better than you think. Because here's the thing too about astrology in general is that's part of why astrology is so trippy, because all of us, most of us, we grow and become aware of some things and work on things and improve things and stuff like that without ever seeing our birth chart, So when you look, it can be surprising, that you go, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I can't, like, oh, that makes me want to cry. That's so sweet, and then you read the next one, you go, is that why you, well, you always do that, and you always did do that, It gives you a different appreciation for things,
Yeah. Annie, she really, like, when I say she gave me so much, because like I understand what you're saying. There's several things I've looked at where it does not say that a Leo and a Taurus are compatible, because they're both headstrong and so many other things. Yeah. But there was so many things that she was able to show me in our chart that shows that we were destined, that we were compatible in different ways, serving a purpose together. Like it was several things, of confirmation. So it takes some digging, and there's multiple parts to it. It's not simple at all. So I would definitely highly suggest, if you are looking, if you guys are in a relationship, and if you do want assistance with picking a wedding date or an engagement date, or just trying to see those green and red flags, because nobody wants to go into divorce. So if there's a way for you to, if you're already, which in most cases, there's a lot of times in the back of our head, we're just not sure, because there's a good chance that you may not, but if you want to confirm, if you want to see, make that, so you have the opportunity to make the choice, and you want to make
an informed decision.
Thank you. The best informed decision.
Yeah,
that's right. Then I would highly suggest reaching out to Annie. And just for anyone who's curious, period, like she said, you can start off with going to astro.com. There is plenty of YouTube university videos out there too, of people who are just learning, like they just break it down. If you have this planet in this house, they'll just break down a whole bunch of info for you and just soak it all in. I've been interested in astrology for a long time, and I'm really just now getting to the part where I'm really digging in and learning myself. And I can only aspire to be like Annie, because she knows her stuff. She knows her stuff. So I want to get to that place too. So,
and we'll definitely
honored to share it.
We'll definitely make sure that we leave all of your information down below in our description box thing down there, so that if people are interested in booking with you, learning more, they can contact you if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. I got my website up. It's www.luminariesemporium.com.
Nice.
So I have all my readings on there, and I also have a pretty good collection going on in there in my shop. So check it out if you'd like to.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Annie. I really appreciate you being willing to come on the show and just giving us a tidbit of your knowledge.
Scratch the surface, huh?
Yes, again. So we'll definitely try to find some way to bring you back on the show later, and hopefully we can do it where it's a little bit more interactive, where we can actually show. We're going to find something where we can actually show and help
break it down a little more, visually, Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.
You have a good
the rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, once again, we want to thank Miss Annie for coming on and teaching us a lot about birth charts and things like that. Tweet, look, I'm learning from Tweet and Miss Annie, because I'm new to all of it. Like, how when you were little, you used to look at the newspaper horoscopes and Who am I compatible with?
Yeah.
This take it deeper, y'all. This take it deeper. If you want to know all about you,
yes,
go ahead and reach out to Miss Annie.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being open-minded and staying tuned to the show. You know, dig in further, find out about it. There's nothing wrong with learning, being open, and understanding. It's just a new level again of understanding yourself and understanding God and understanding how He made you.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's all.
Yeah. So a little bit before we go, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Miss Annie's information is down in the description box. Go ahead and reach out to her for some one-on-ones to dig a little deeper. And before we leave, y'all, what do we always say? A good thing ain't hard to find,
but it takes work to keep it.
And don't you ever forget it. We love y'all. Love y'all. Bye.
Bye-bye.